I have another friend in town, true story, who honorably served in the United States Air Force. He's been married for over 50 years to the same woman. Raised productive and generous children. He is a devout, practicing, church-going Christian. He moved to Bloomington, this safe and civil community. 40 years ago, he and his family, and he settled in a subdivision, what's it called, Park East? The one out there on the east side of town. I'm sorry?
Park Ridge East.
That's it, Park Ridge East. And soon after he moved in, people who claimed to be Christian burned a cross in his yard. Welcome to Bloomington. Which I have said before, and I had to give a speech the other day, this is as bigoted and racist community I've ever lived in. Ever lived in. So the Christians burned a cross in his yard to welcome him. That was the welcome wagon that he and his family got. He did nothing. I talked to him about it. He said, I'm not doing anything about this. He raised his family. They went to college. He's paid his taxes. He's loved his life. He's been a wonderful friend of mine, a wonderful, good human being. He's Christ-like. Love does not envy. Love does not boast. Love is not proud. I have a very successful friend of mine who also is a devout Christian. Very devout Christian. And he too has suffered hate-filled discrimination. His family home was confiscated years ago by an invading horde. In response, my friend and his family, but particularly my friend, made a commitment. And that was for his home to be one, to be a safe haven for the very people who had hated his family 50 years ago, uprooted his family, and made them move to a foreign land. He, as with my other friends, is a very humble man. He remains polite, generous, gracious to all God's children, regardless of their religious practices, the color of their skin, anything like that. Love is not rude. Love is not self-seeking. Around 1864, a little boy was born in the Deep South. Of course, God-fearing and God-loving and Christ-adoring Christians hated this little boy because he was black. Those Christians are the wackiest people, aren't they? And they wonder why so many people hate them. Well, these good Christians in the South hated this little guy, and of course he couldn't get an education, and he couldn't hardly eat, he didn't have any family to speak of, and so he was able to escape, and he ended up in Iowa, as a matter of fact, and so by some miracle started to get an education, and by miracle upon miracle upon miracle, he gained a PhD. And he returned to Alabama, to Tuskegee, and I've been to Tuskegee a couple of times, great little town. Now get this, and he alone, underscore the word alone, no one else, he alone went back to the lion's den, went back to the place where he was persecuted, went back to the place where he couldn't drink out of a water fountain because he wasn't a human being. He went back to where he couldn't be out at nighttime. He went back to where he had to live in a little ghetto because the wealthy people, incidentally, that's where Tara is, you know, and Gone with the Wind. They didn't want anything to do with him because he's a nigger. You know, nigger. And so the nigger boy had to stay over here. Well, anyway, he went back to Alabama, and he ended up at Tuskegee, and he alone saved the racist South from economic destruction by his inventive use of the soybean, as well as other agricultural product. He alone saved the South from economic ruination. His name? George Washington Carver. We're not taught about George Washington Carver anymore. I don't know why. He saved the South. One person of God did that. Well, then in December of 1955, a little frail 42-year-old gal, black woman turns out, this is when the South, run by Christians, they didn't let people of different color on buses. And because the Christians in the South said that black human beings can't get on a bus. And if they do, they have to sit where? In the back, because that's where you put people who are niggers. Put them in the back. So you go to Birmingham. I've been down to Birmingham where they put the niggers in the back of the truck and the back of the bus with the watermelons, right? That's where Christians put them. One communist that did that to the African Americans. One socialist that did that to the African Americans. It was Christians that did that to the African Americans because they love Jesus. That's what you do when you love people. You put them in the back of the bus. So anyway, the Christians put her in the back of the bus, and she says, you know something, this isn't going to happen anymore. And she went to the front of the bus, and she says, I'm not moving again. Old Bull Connor, there's a nice white guy, took his bull whip and worked people over because of her. What people? Well, anyway, this gal, now follow me on this, as a result of one person, now get this, not only do all people in the United States have access to the front of the bus, that started the revolution for access for people of disabilities. One human being did this. The government sure as heck didn't do it. One human being did it. And of course, the racists didn't do it because they're incapable of doing good. Now, both Mr. Carver, Dr. Carver, we should say, and Rosa Parks could have easily become the animals their tormentors were, but no. Why? Because love is not easily angered. Love keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil. Love rejoices in the truth. On September 11th, 2001, as frightened and bloodied souls raced down steps and poured out into the avenues and streets of Manhattan, as the Twin Towers began to collapse upon them, firefighters raced into hell to save the lost. Love always protects.